On this edition of the Five Star Podcast of Wrestling, I will talk with co host Justin Lowery about the biggest news in WWE and AEW, including the very peculiar situation with Drake Maverick, a Nia Jax botch once again, and much, much more. That's all to come on this edition of the Five Star Podcast of Wrestling. And welcome back to another edition. I am your host, Sean Meyers. I am joined by my returning co-host, Justin Lowery. Justin, nice to see you. How have you been?
Terrific. How you been?
Sitting pretty. Been doing a lot of sitting, actually, as most people are. You're still able to continue working. One of the few people that I know that is working somewhat of a normal schedule. But you know who else is working somewhat of a normal schedule?
Wrestlers.
That is correct. WWE has continued their programming, and this has been a big debate. And word came out earlier about AEW now going back to, I guess, filming some live shows, or at least filming, alternating between live and film shows maybe over the next handful of weeks. And this is all happening in Florida, where it seems like pretty much anything goes, you know, that they've reopened beaches, things like that. So the first thing that I have for you is WWE seems like they're just making a disaster out of this in terms of PR. It's coming across terribly. But at this point, I think Vince's idea is, well, the wrestling fans are still going to watch. The people who don't watch are going to criticize like they always do. Now AEW is following suit. So what's your take overall on how this is playing out, and now AEW, in a sense, kind of following the same path that Vince has set?
I mean, I don't really have a huge issue with it. I mean, I believe Tony Khan when he says, I told the people, like, if you don't come, it's okay. There will be no punishment. I really do believe that. I do believe Vince told people that, but I don't believe Vince actually means that.
He told them that because he kind of has to tell them that.
Right. And people might
It's the same with the Saudi Arabia show, right?
Yes. I think Vince's history proves otherwise. People then could say, well, look at Roman. Well, Roman's in a position where he can pull that card because he's Roman Reigns, he's at the top of the card. Somebody who's fighting for a position, or somebody who's in the middle of the card, they know they can't say that, because if they say that, they might not be put back on TV. Or if they do get back on TV, they just get jobbed out, because that is Vince McMahon's MO.
Do you remember one of the people who, I don't know if he necessarily said it to WWE, but said it on Twitter, that he would not feel comfortable wrestling during this pandemic? It was Lio Rush.
Yes, he did say that. And where's he at right now?
He got released.
Interesting.
And with some of the people that were released, they weren't really very, I mean, everyone in a sense is talented, but they weren't particularly talented, or they weren't really used much at all. Like Ryder and Hawkins hadn't done anything. Primo and Epico, people didn't even know they were with the company. Aiden English got moved to a commentary table. Lio Rush was a champion less than 6 months ago. He kind of seems like a guy that you could say, now I know he had other issues previously with his backstage behavior and stuff like that, but it seems like maybe it was somewhat of a factor when he said, like, publicly, I don't feel safe doing this, and then they didn't use him, and then they let him go, right?
If it isn't, it's a bad look, right? Like, it seems a little fishy. I mean, he's very young, he's very talented. He could definitely be used on the NXT brand for sure.
Which is what they had been. I mean, he was sort of the NXT/205, which is merged really into one brand in a sense.
Right. You know, it's a little, I mean, I'm not surprised. Vince is what Vince is.
And earlier this week, I don't know if you saw this, there was, I guess, a complaint from one of the employees. Yes. Now, we don't know if this is a wrestler, because it's not just wrestlers who are doing this. Everyone, you know, that makes this show happen. And honestly, like, the show still looks of a pretty high quality, even though there's not fans there, right? There's a lot of people still working hard to make this look
your production, I mean, your people with your lights, your ring setup, you still need agents there, producers there, a seamstress, you know, people with the costumes. I mean, yes, there's still people involved, even though they let a lot of people go. We don't know who it is. Could have been one of the people that got fired, because it happened, it was said what right after they released all those people, right? Is it somebody that has sour grapes? You don't know, and without someone putting their name to it, which I get why maybe you wouldn't put your name to it.
Well, I think it's a current employee. At least you would think so, because the letter sort of came across as like, I'm going to work because I'm afraid if I don't, I could lose my job. That's also why they're not using their name.
Right.
So it probably is a person, like you said, that's afraid to kind of speak up because they don't have that power. And whether they will, get fired or not, there'll probably be some sort of either immediate or down the road ramifications.
Oh yeah, Vince? They're not stupid enough. If someone pulled that, release them next week, what they would do is be, oh yeah, sit at home. Maybe they come back, they get a small push, to play their cards right, and then they get pushed down the card. Like, for instance, Zack Ryder, what was that, like 08, 09? He got himself over on his own, right? Vince,
which is incredible.
Right.
That really
and
was,
Vince
in a sense,
that. So what did he do? He gave the fans what they wanted. We'll push them, and within like a month, he booked them to where he just squashed the hell out of them because Vince said, no, you get over on my terms. And that's a Vince thing. If he doesn't like what you do, he will punish you. I mean, he's just known for that.
So shifting back to AEW, you mentioned, okay, they probably aren't forcing people. They're not going to hold it against people. What would happen if, 5 or 6 of the main guys said, we're not going to do this?
Well, actually, I know you don't really watch AEW, but if you actually been watching the last month, they're missing a lot of top guys that weren't there at the TV tapings.
I know
because
Jericho's been doing some of the commentary.
Yeah, which actually has been brilliant. Him and Shivani, I just bowed down.
Is Jim Ross not coming to the shows for fear out of this?
I mean, I would assume maybe he decided, not to do it, which is actually, I hate to say it, great for the wrestling fans because I don't think he's very good anymore. I've said
Lawler wasn't at a couple of Raws for a while,
right?
And they brought him back after WrestleMania.
He would be, to me, high risk. He's 70? He had a heart attack before. I mean, hey, to each their own. I mean, I don't, anyone can make their own decisions. That's fine with me. But yeah, I think the commentary's been awesome. But the Lucha Brothers haven't been on. Pac hasn't been on. Scorpio Sky hasn't been on in weeks. I mean, there are guys that have been presented at the around the top of the card that have not been on. Moxley has not been on every week. They've done a couple vignettes. It looks like maybe he taped around his home or
right.
Who did something, but
which Adam Cole I think was doing something similar for a while.
Right, which is okay, he's clearly they're putting him on the show, mentioning him, but he's clearly not there. So, which hey, I mean. I think it's they're still presenting in a way where, they do bring them up. They show little videos of them, so they're still in your mind. But it's
which in today's day and age is so easy to do. You don't have to go to the show.
You don't have to be there to film yourself or do something. So clearly, I think more AEW guys have clearly taken off than WWE guys, and that's probably a workplace environment feeling, a fear maybe of losing your job or position on the card.
Do you remember when this sort of started to begin happening with WWE, when they went to the shows in, I guess, isolation, if you will, at the Performance Center? There's a lot of people who were off for a while. Corey Graves was not on. Carmella, as I mentioned, Jerry Lawler. And then there was word about the people who were out of WrestleMania for various reasons. The Miz, Dana Brooke.
Mysterio.
Yeah,
Mysterio
and then again, Andrade probably was a real injury, but you never know. Everyone's come back. I don't think, other than Roman, a single person is. So it doesn't seem like anyone in the entire company, in terms of the on-camera performers, has missed anything other than Roman. So even the people who maybe had symptoms or whatever, they were gone for 2 weeks, and then they're back. It just seems crazy to me. I don't think every single person would be on board saying, this is what I want to do. And they all say, well, we're trying to entertain people. You don't think football players and basketball players and hockey players want to entertain people? They can't, because they realize how dangerous it is not only to have people in close proximity, but touching each other. This whole idea, I think the worst look was after WrestleMania. I really thought that'll be it, because they had the stay-at-home order in effect in Florida. and then it changed, and they went back to doing live shows, which is even worse. Now they've kind of backed off of that a little bit, where they're sort of doing what AEW do, where some live, some taped, but it just seems terrible, and it's leading to, I think, the ratings continue to dwindle, even though there's nothing else for people to watch.
Well, let's be honest. Wrestling's not that popular, especially right now, and honestly, there's something missing when there's not a live audience. There just is. It's where some of the matches can still be as good. The storytelling, in some ways, could be a little bit better because they're not doing stuff to get a reaction from the crowd, like promo-wise and stuff. But it's still missing something.
When you say the matches can be as good, I'm assuming you're meaning like actually like their technique in the ring. But the matches don't feel like they're as good without the
because
fans.
There's no like pop for a big move or a big spot. Like you need that crowd reaction. And I mean, you're talking about people touching each other, this and that, and dangerous. Which they're saying that is dangerous, but facts are facts. And to go on WWE site, not one wrestler has tested positive for the virus.
Well, again, I think probably a handful of people did, the ones who weren't on for a while. And we know someone in the company that wasn't a wrestler did.
Right.
And if I worked for that company and that person was someone that I was even in close proximity to, I'd probably feel a little awkward about it.
Yeah, people have different beliefs on the matter. I guess that's your own personal opinion. These guys, I'm sure there's some that don't really want to be there. There's some that probably don't mind. It's a tough situation. I mean, luckily, you would think if one person would get it, the way they say it's so contagious, that you would get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wrestlers within a week or two coming down with it, and then maybe that would get him to stop running shows. But since there's no one coming down with it, and if there has, he's kept it quiet enough that it hasn't come out.
The other thing is that I think about is, for the most part, it's not particularly deadly for people that are in good shape. Now we know that NBA All-Stars still contracted it, and they did their 2 weeks, and then they're okay. I think Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert and all them were fine after they isolated for 2 weeks. But the question is, these wrestlers, even if they get over it and they're fine, they're coming in contact with family members, and that's where it becomes more than just their own decision to go in or to not go in, where it affects the people that are around.
If you have a family, if you have young kids, wife, if you have an elderly parent that lives with you, they have to make that determination if it's worth the risk. For Roman, he was able to say no, but he was in that position where he could say no. There's certain guys that could probably say no and get away with it, but there's a lot of people that can't.
You know who's able to get away with a lot, Justin? Nia Jax. She makes her return after WrestleMania, and listen, I generally understand that a lot of people that even aren't portrayed well in WWE are still very talented. And a lot of times you'll see, like, it's just a matter of how they're booked, or if they had a different character, or if they got an opportunity. I think I have pretty consistently, from her time that she started on TV in NXT up until now, have just really disliked Nia Jax. I just don't find her very talented. I understand she's unique, but I don't think that that's any different than the Great Khali being unique. She's really been bad in the ring. She's had a lot of issues, and yes, so has Brie Bella, so has Ronda Rousey. But to me, Nia is just really bad, and it showed up again on Monday, and I know you saw the clip of what she did to Kairi Sane. I'll first preface this by saying there's a lot of really dangerous spots that WWE performers do all the time now, and I see, like, every week Tony Nese does like a German where he sends a guy into the turnbuckle where it's almost like the same type of landing, but it seems like this was a different scenario where Nia was just reckless when she really could have been much more under control.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the internet world has seen the clip, and it's clear as day that Carrie is screaming, I'm not set, and Nia doesn't listen whatsoever. She doesn't pause. She doesn't try to regrip or, change up the move, whatever. She just continues, throws her in there harshly without, like, any type of protection. And, I mean, it seems like she was okay, luckily. But that could have been pretty devastating. I mean, that type of move ended Sting's career, into the turnbuckle like that with his
And the
neck.
thing is, that one, I like. If you go back and watch, maybe you would.
Didn't look bad.
Yeah, I would say that was a typical buckle bomb, and sometimes things happen. With Nia, it seems like she's been reckless, and the problem is she's so gigantic compared to all the other competitors, and in this case, more than just about anyone else. Kairi Sane's maybe the smallest person in the entire company. It came across terribly, and it might be Sane's last match. There's a lot of rumors that she will be, returning to Japan or going elsewhere. Her contract should be up soon if it isn't already. So hopefully this isn't the end of her. But it just seems like every time Nia Jax comes back, they're dead set on giving her this big push. Are we going to see her again being one of the top names in this women's division, no matter what she continues to do in the ring?
It seems that way if Vince wants it, because like you said, she has a different look than the rest of them. She's a bigger girl. So they want to present her. Vince always liked his monsters, and they want to present her as the monster of the women's division. And, they want her to be booed and stuff like this when the fans then tweet at her, and call her names, this and that. She seems to relish it. She gets off on it. She responds,
Remember, she did the broken nose to Becky Lynch.
Right. Which in turn actually, I think, really helped Becky, but at the same time was once again careless and actually ruined a match at Survivor Series because of her carelessness. Like, I never really cared for her. She wasn't very good even in NXT. I think she's always been labeled pretty unsafe. I don't know if she doesn't know her own strength, if it's she doesn't care, or she's just not very good at what she does. Maybe it's a combination. I don't know.
Anything else as far as Monday Night Raw that jumped out? I know it was a lot of Zelina Vega and her stable again, which I'm digging, even though I think Austin Theory is sort of miscast in there. It just seems like that's been a focal point. And to me, Raw really is now like a land of opportunity for young or underutilized wrestlers. Apollo Crews is in Money in the Bank. It might not last, but I think Paul Heyman, if he does have a decent amount of influence, he's giving so many people chances on Raw that hadn't been getting opportunities previous.
But did you see Vince's comment? Was it yesterday or the day before? Because the ratings for Raw are horrible. And
they're bad for SmackDown and NXT too.
Yeah, and wrestling in general. But he blamed it on not having the proper stars, or he said Brock Lesnar's not on TV. And that's Vince's. He looks at it and he's not thinking, well, it's because there's no fans or this is just a very weird time. He's looking at it. Well, look, these young guys are getting on and look at the ratings. It's all their fault. And he'll blame them. And as soon as things open back up and we can get back to normal and there's butts in the seats, I guarantee you that first show, Roman will be on, Lesnar will be on. He'll call back Goldberg if he can. I mean, Austin will be on having a beer, Rock will be via, satellite, and you'll never see these guys again because that's what, Vince is. To me, in general, though, there's more people than ever sitting at home, and it's definitely not reflecting in the ratings.
Right. I don't know what else they're watching. Right.
Good point. Like, I know this Monday was the season finale of Better Call Saul. I was watching that. I don't believe a lot of wrestling fans were, maybe some. But there's not much on. There's no sports. There's no competition. What are they doing? I mean, at least in our area, it hasn't been super nice out yet. So you're not even outside, like in your yard. I just think not having fans, it's a problem. And then if someone does tune in, they're not seeing anybody they know, to your point, and the casual fan just turns it off. Because he hasn't made any new fans probably in the last at least 5 years, maybe even 10 years. You have to go back 15, 20 years, and if you don't have those guys on your TV, those people are turning it off. And the people that are still watching are your actual wrestling fans, and that's what you
probably
get.
Appreciate guys like Apollo Crews and Aleister Black and Andrade and those people on Raw.
Yeah.
So we talked about the releases last week. Sean Benjamin, pinch hitting, did a really nice job. I want to thank him. One of the names that he talked about was Drake Maverick and how he's gotten away from being the 205 Live commissioner, which, by the way, like, you know how I feel about that show. I've been such a big fan of it, and he really honestly cared about trying to make that show legitimate. Never really happened, but he did his best. He, I think, is very versatile in different roles. He was never looked at as like a strict wrestler. He was kind of comedic stuff, whatever. But they have him booked in this 8-man tournament for the interim cruiserweight championship. Then they release him. He posts a video online where he's literally crying, and he says, like, they're giving me the opportunity to wrestle at least 3 more matches because it's not a single elimination tournament. It's 3 pool play matches, and then the winner advances to a championship. So 3 or 4 matches. And he said, I'm going to give it my all, and, like, everyone got behind him. On Wednesday, they really made sure that everyone knew about the circumstance, and they played it up much like they would any other storyline. So people start thinking, is he coming back? Was he ever let go? Leo Rush said, no matter what happens, it's kind of effed up, right? I mean, either they're playing a storyline based on this guy's real-life emotions, or they misled everyone and lied about it. Drake ended up losing. There's still a chance if he wins 2 more matches, whatnot. But what do you make of how this is playing out?
Okay. This is what I think. Okay, I'm not exactly sure, but here I go. I think he was 100% released, not storyline related. I think he went on and he gave a very sincere, I don't know if you want to call it a promo, but reaction to his firing immediately.
Which was, it was almost immediate. It wasn't like he waited like a day.
Right. That was a very real, raw, emotional thing, and I think you could feel it. What I saw on Wednesday, even in the post interview that he had after the match, and he was kind of doing the crying again, to me that wasn't real. Like, I could tell that I felt it was real in his reaction. To me, that was him storyline wise being forced to cry, playing a character. If they're smart, they could realize, because that got over 2 million views, his video, which is actually more. He got more views and more than people actually watched Raw this past Monday.
I could be wrong, but I believe it was just on like his own Twitter, and it wasn't through WWE or anything. Right.
So he ended up getting more views through there than people that watched Monday Night Raw this past Monday. They could always rethink their decision, rehire him, make it part of a storyline. I guess we'll know after his second match. If he loses again, then you know that, all right, they're just talking about it a little bit. But they, because everybody who watched NXT Wednesday, I guarantee every single one who watched that knew the story about him being released.
Right.
People that watch NXT know all the.
Well,
the
even
work.
If they didn't, they found out throughout the commentary. They made that very apparent.
Yeah. So if they're smart, they'll keep him. If not, he'll find work elsewhere. If they leave him go and they don't follow up on this, I think they missed an opportunity to, have. After that match, after he lost, okay, I have no problem with him losing the first match and build it up like an underdog story.
I was kind of surprised that he lost, to be honest. I thought what they would do is push him, and maybe they still will, put him in the championship, have him lose to a heel, and that way that heel is kind of made forever because,
but if you want to keep him and crown him, you could have something like Regal or somebody, in power come out and be like, hey, man, it's tough. We really wanted to keep you, but hey, we all know who makes the decisions around here, and kind of put the heat on Vince, because Vince is the bad guy, right? Play that up to him, have him win the belt, and have Vince come to NXT because he's all about trying to get NXT ratings. Show up Vince to NXT and tell Drake that you were wrong, and you could play some type of angle where if you could advertise it, hey, Vince McMahon's going to be on NXT, I guarantee that's going to pull some eyeballs away from AEW.
But at that point, then everyone knows, like, okay, he's re-signed. You know what I mean?
Right. At some point,
it would become pretty clear, I think.
Right. If he wins, clearly he's re-signed. I mean, it's wrestling, yes. So, but eventually you're going to figure it out. If he loses his second match, I'm going to assume he's not re-signing because I don't think you're going to lose 2, win 1, and
Well,
You
yeah,
know,
and then the question becomes, in his last match, do they let him leave with a victory, even though it would be meaningless, just so that he kind of gets like a nice send off, or do
no, because I
they?
think
That
in pretty
almost
much
never happens
wrestling,
in
I think
wrestling,
it's
right?
understood if you're on your way out, you lose. Like there's no holding your head up high walking out the door.
Fair enough. Really, it seems like this also could have applied to Sarah Logan. A lot of rumors that she actually might be re-signed eventually. Now she is married to one of the Viking Raiders. Which, oh man, did you see what they're doing with them, Justin? Please tell me
Yes, I did.
what in the world is that?
That's a Vince thing. Vince loves stupid comedy. Let's take a team that was very badass in NXT and in Ring of Honor and around the world. And you know what? Let's bring them to the main roster, change up their name. So there's already a rough start. And you know what? Now let's make them a comedic tag team because the Revival wouldn't do it. So you know what? We'll pick these guys instead.
So Sarah Logan, she's married to God, I don't even remember what his name is. Eric, right?
Sure.
Yes, Eric. Um, Rayro is who she's married to. Eric is his character. So I think that maybe there's a chance that they do try to keep her around. They mentioned her in two different storylines on Raw, but she wasn't seen. This is almost never happens in WWE. When someone's released, and we saw a little glimpse of it tonight with Matt Hardy. Matt Hardy's now in AEW. They did their very best to not show him in the Jeff Hardy package. He was in there for like 2 seconds because they were talking about the Hardy Boys coming back, but they did everything they could to like have the photos of only Jeff Hardy. With Sarah Logan, they went out of their way to mention her. Where do you think this is headed? And again,
Here's the difference with that right now. Matt Hardy's already signed with AEW, appearing on their program. Sarah Logan right now is unemployed, and there's a hiring freeze. It's not like anyone can now go sign with anybody because nobody's hiring.
well, she's stuck for now probably about 80 days or so. Anyway,
right, but
they have
even
that
take that out of
non-compete.
the equation. Like nobody has money right now. No promotion is hiring people. Like New Japan, TNA, like you. So there's no fear of any of these guys, at least in the short term, getting picked up from any other company. It's just
Probably
not going to
not.
happen.
I mean, no offense to her, but she's not like a huge difference maker either.
No, but I think the AEW's woman division's pretty weak. I think she would be a solid pickup for that division if she so chooses. I think she could be used in NXT. I mean, I'm surprised she got released. I still could find use.
That one sort of surprised me too.
She's useful. Like there's a use for her. It's just I don't know why they did that. It's weird. It's almost like did she say something backstage to somebody and make somebody angry? I mean, I don't know. It was an odd release for me.
Money in the Bank this year has already been filmed. It took place throughout the corporate headquarters, and it's going to lead to them wrestling on the roof. Are you interested in watching this?
Actually, yes. It's going to be different, and I thought I'll commend them from thinking outside the box a little bit here.
Which I think Vince alluded to when they had their like quarterly
Right.
update or whatever.
That's the stuff you got to do right now. So, okay, we already saw WrestleMania, and what got the good reviews? Basically, the stuff that was filmed like in a cinematic way, right?
Yes.
So he's like, okay, all right, okay, this worked. So what can we do with Money in the Bank? I know. Let's do. I'm like, And when I first heard it, I went, oh my God, what the hell is he thinking? I'm like, you know what? No, this could be interesting. This could be fun. They have a very good production company. I mean, their production works pretty damn good. So it's like, you know what? I'd rather watch that than watch them hold a regular Money in the Bank match in Full Sail with no fans. So I'm actually looking forward to it.
And they had a couple of ladder matches recently. They had the one at WrestleMania, which was like the half of the tag teams, and that was very good. I thought the women's one on NXT was pretty lackluster, and I think I had maybe mentioned that before.
Yeah.
So this would be you don't want to have too many ladder matches all in a short period of time. This is another way to sort of space things out differently. Even if there is a ladder at the end, it's not a traditional ladder match. You had mentioned AEW before and how some of the top stars aren't there. Big debate this week is, it of course involves Dave Meltzer, who is #1 fan of AEW, it seems, and the use and booking of Kenny Omega, who was, I think, before he signed with AEW, the biggest star in Japan, and many people thought the best wrestler in the world, and he still might be. I don't think those skills have completely deteriorated, but he doesn't seem like the biggest star in AEW or even the second or third biggest right now. What do you think of how he's presented, and in particular this past week when I guess he had somewhat of a competitive match against a guy who's a no name that's not even part of the company, I'm to understand?
Correct. He's presented at the top of the card, but I wouldn't say he's presented as a top 3-4 guy.
He's
probably
been doing
even
some tag team stuff.
Yeah. When at the very early on of AEW, before they started running weekly shows, he was considered pretty high profile, but he lost every match pretty much he was in. I think
he lost to Jericho to put Jericho into the first ever championship match. Right?
I assumed he would be like their first ever champion.
Omega,
I just thought Omega was the call to make. I think he actually ended up hurting himself by being too unselfish. I think, sometimes it's okay to be selfish. I think all the elite guys, I think the Young Bucks and even Cody, I think these guys that look, everybody knows we're kind of in charge of this promotion. We all hold executive roles. We don't want to be like Triple H. What's some of the complaints in the WWE? Blah, blah, blah. So let's use ourselves to get other guys over and not put ourselves in position to be champions right off the bat, hold the titles, blah, 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 even though that's pretty much what the people wanted to see was those guys. I mean, those guys were the ones that got that promotion off the ground. People wanted to see the elite. They actually probably were too unselfish. The tag team matches have been pretty solid. I mean, him and Hangman, they have a story going. Hangman hasn't been on. He's one of the guys that have not been on in quite some time. So
doing cowboy stuff.
Yeah, that stuff's kind of been put on hold, which that was clearly building between those two. Because I would say, I mean, the Inner Circle has been presented as a very big top faction. Of course, Jericho, Cody, Moxley, of course. I mean, Pac has been presented a little bit over him. Do I think he's still one of the best wrestlers in the world? Yeah. I read an interview a month and a half, 2 months ago. He actually said that he could easily still go out and have a 45-minute match like he did in New Japan.
Right.
But he goes, it's different. He actually even called the wrestling over here different. And he goes, he doesn't want to put his body through that on a weekly basis, having to do 45-minute matches, hour matches. He actually said that.
What people complained about when guys come from the high work rate places to WWE too?
Yeah. I mean, he basically said, and, I'm paraphrasing, that, that's what, like, he can if he chooses, but he
seems very much similar to like AJ Styles to me.
Yeah, I mean, AJ Styles can give you one hell of a match, but and he still can in WWE, but he's not putting on like 5-star classics every.
And it seems like AJ's okay with that.
Right, I think these guys. I mean, AJ's 41, 42. I think they get to a point to their career they want to kind of preserve their bodies a little bit. They're getting paid very well. They maybe want to extend their career another 4 or 5 years. I think when you get older too, you realize like, hey, the stuff I was pulling off when I was 30, 31, 32 is great, but I can't keep doing that and expect to, keep wrestling for another 4 or 5 years. I'm going to end up, done in a year or two. And
we saw that with people like Edge.
Right. I think maybe these guys just kind of wise up over time that they don't need to constantly have these huge spots. I mean, no DQ match with Moxley, I think we watched that together. That was pretty brutal. I mean, he took some shots and stuff, and there wasn't your quote-unquote 45-minute classic match that you saw him in New Japan. I think he has it in him.
But is booking like what we had this past week detrimental to him?
Probably to the average. If you're someone who just started watching AEW, right, and you actually don't know who these guys are, but you're just watching it, you probably don't view Omega as a star. You just don't. I'll be honest. I can see why someone could be like, oh, well, why? He's not really that great. I mean, yeah, he's won some matches. He's a tag team champ, but I mean, he's just, it's almost like the 50-50 booking that we complain about over in WWE. How can you get somebody over with 50-50 booking.
Or in this sense, it wasn't that it was 50-50. It was more so that he, went toe-to-toe with a guy that really is not in the same category, probably for the sake of making it a better match as opposed to building his character.
Because very early on, I thought they were building towards him like he kept losing and losing. I'm like, okay, this is going to be part of a storyline.
Right. Like a redemption.
Him over, redemption, or, coming over to the States and losing his mojo and having, and then it just seems he ended up in a tag team with Hangman, and it kind of changed it a little bit. I'm like, okay. So I thought maybe they were going one way and then decided to change course, and I think it has hurt him, yes.
I don't want to go too much into the next topic because there's a lot of questions that haven't been answered, and it's probably going to get into like a legal type of battle, but it came out today that potentially Velveteen Dream was involved in something really terrible, I guess involving an underage person where he was sending messages he should not have been, and I guess there's pictures and voicemail, something like that. He came out already and said that's not done by me. I don't think he necessarily said it wasn't him, but he said it wasn't him who sent it. Is that correct?
Yeah. He said that it was a picture of his junk.
It was a third party who was...
But he was hacked or something, and somebody sent that. It was, yes, his picture of him. He's not denying that, but he said he wasn't the one who sent it. So that's what he said.
I'm not going to ask you what you think happened here, but what are potential ramifications and what should WWE do? Because this is a guy who was in the championship feud in NXT with Adam Cole.
Well, first off, you're going to see probably an internal investigation through them, or they'll probably cooperate with law enforcement because there'll probably be a law enforcement investigation.
Maybe. We saw what, they let go of Enzo Amore right off the bat, and Enzo in the end
here's
was
the
kind of...
thing with that is, they let go of him because he did not let them know that there's a difference. He kept it a secret. They didn't find out until the police said something, and they were caught off guard. This is out in the open. I don't think they're going to be like, you're fired, you're gone. There might be a suspension or something until they figure out, let the process play out, give him his due process. Was he guilty? Is he telling the truth? Let the legal system play itself out before you determine if he's keeping his job or not. You're probably going to have to take him off TV because it's even if he's innocent, which you're presumed innocent until you're proven guilty, it's kind of hard for that company who caters to children, who's a PG company, to throw him out on TV in a title feud when he has an allegation, whether it's unjust or not, over his head.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be on TV, and of course they probably won't even reference him because they haven't even referenced Roman Reigns, which is just kind of insane.
Apparently Vince told people, don't bring him up.
Right. And I did want to go back. I said that we haven't really seen anyone consistently be off. There's some people that haven't been on since WrestleMania, and it looks like maybe Kevin Owens is one of those people that's not interested in working potentially. We haven't seen Orton or Edge. But again, everyone at some point since they've gone to the empty arena, other than, even Roman at the start of that was involved too. But I did want to mention, because I was thinking about guys like Kevin Owens and whatnot. Velveteen Dream, this could be just a terrible, to me, he was probably the safest bet in all of NXT to be a future main roster star to me.
Oh, no, I agree. Time will tell. If he's guilty of this, then, he has a lot bigger problems than, just losing a job in wrestling. I guess we'll find out. It's hard to really talk about it. It's a very, serious subject. And like you said, we don't know a lot of the facts. It's very new. So it's hard to say anything. You can't, what we just said, you can't have him on TV. He's probably not going to be referenced. They're going to have to let the legal thing play out and then go from there.
Right. And it's still going to be a very difficult scenario, no matter what is found. Even if he is, in a sense, cleared, that's something that people are going to be remembering.
Unfortunately, even if...
here in Pittsburgh, Ben Roethlisberger, the quarterback of the Steelers, that's, 10 plus years ago, and it's still something that's brought up a lot of
And
times.
he was never charged or anything. And more recently, the Myles Garrett, Mason Rudolph situation. Myles Garrett said he used a racial slur. Mason Rudolph has denied it. There's no evidence that he said it. But yet, people now will assume that Mason Rudolph is a racist just because. And there's no proof out there. You don't know for sure what happened, but there's some people that will now just assume he's a racist.
Unfortunate, all aspects when you have a story that comes out like this. And certainly, there's never a good time, but it just seems like a really, really bad week in terms of a really bad month in terms of wrestling in general. Anything else that you wanted to touch on, Justin? Anything you found interesting? Or
Yeah, I guess. I mean, this week, somewhat wrestling related. Vince is also being sued. I think, we found out a WWE employee went to the state of Florida, and like the next day, Oliver Luck, who's a very wealthy man in his own regard.
That is the father of Andrew Luck.
Yes. Who I would assume has pretty good money and good lawyers, probably like Vince. And I would assume if he's suing Vince, he probably believes he could win, and he's in the right.
Relating to his role previously as the commissioner of the XFL, and where he was, was it wrongfully terminated or misled about something?
Or something. Apparently, when he has guaranteed money, apparently, in his contracts, apparently, and when Vince fired him, he told him he's not getting anything.
And it wasn't that Vince fired him per se. They let go of all, basically, employees, right? I mean, it was kind of like when the league, I don't want to say folded, but pretty much shut down.
Yeah, I think I read that he technically, I guess Vince is saying he actually fired him before he shut down the league. And that's how Vince is trying to get away from not paying him. There's something that Vince is trying to walk a line. And Oliver Luck's like, no, because he had a very good job with the NCAA. He was on, I think the committee determining the 4 college football teams, stuff like that. And
he's probably an idiot in that case then.
Well, he left a good job there to go be the commissioner of the XFL, and I think with the promise of guaranteed money, from what the story I read.
Right. And
Vince is now trying to get out of that money, and Oliver Luck's like, oh, no, you owe me this money. And so here we go.
Just another blip on the radar for the career of Vince McMahon, right? It didn't affect him tonight on SmackDown. He came out and was cracking jokes and having a good old time with Paul, as he called him.
Hey, Vinnie Mac can survive the steroid trials of the late 80s, early 90s or whatever. He can pretty much survive anything.
All right, Justin. Well, we survived another episode of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Again, you can follow us on Twitter, 5-Star Pod Wrestle. Please come at me with some fake stories about Elias, because I always enjoy getting into discussions about that off topic. But, man, there's nothing worse than people on Twitter, right?
Twitter's is a cesspool of evil.
There was a woman who said, breaking news, Elias is getting a major gimmick change. I specifically asked him in response. He said no. I said this is false. And I got called out to do my research, and then was told that I'm living in a fantasy world or something along those lines. That proves that what you hear sometimes is completely made up by people who don't know. And I think that came from the story that he can't play guitar because his throat and his fingers were injured by Corbin. So people just assume something, pass it off as fact, right. And then when they get called out on it, they don't.
Here's the thing. I know I responded in the Twitter thread, and Sean Saputo, I believe, also responded, and she did not clap back. So I don't know if she just wasn't looking for a fight, which we weren't being mean or anything, but or she maybe realized that she was making it up, and I'm just going to shut my mouth.
Sometimes it's better just to keep quiet, I guess, in those scenarios. Anyway, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go back, watch out for all the old videos that we have. You can go back over 2 years now, Justin, back to the good old days when the world was a normal place. But for now, that's going to do it for this edition. We'll catch you again next week. For my co-host, Justin Lowery, Sean Meyers signing off. You've been watching the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling.